Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope y'all can hear me fine.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Now get your ears checked. Sorry.
One.
Wonderful. See, I need to get my ears checked apparently.
That's what I've been told.
All right, it's time to get started. If you would, well, Jack, would you mind leading us in prayer?
Almighty God, our loving Heavenly Father, we are so glad that we have this opportunity to gather, to hear and study your word, to learn from your word, to open our minds, to apply and help us to grow in our relationship and in our faith. Be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pardon me, sorry. And allergies have been driving me up the wall. I think it's become bronchitis, so hopefully not, but it feels like it. So anyway, we'll muddle through if I can help it. Try not to cough too much. So we are in Judges chapter 17. We finished up with the death of Samson last week. And Samson judged Israel for 20 years. Really, he's the last judge really named in the book of Judges. And that's kind of almost takes us close to the end of the period of the judges. Now we've got some episodes. The rest of the book is really episodic. It's just talking about some things that took place during the time of the judges, not necessarily in sequential order. And so you'll see a key verse here, and every chapter or every episode begins with something like this. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so that, again, is really the theme of the whole book of Judges. And so chapter 17 through 21 looks at some episodes just to show the level to which Israel had shrunk when it came to their spirituality, whatever. And so chapter 17, we read about a man by the name of Micah. This is not the prophet Micah, just another man by the name of Micah. So there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim whose name was Micah. So again, the mountains of Ephraim, that is that region in the northern part of Israel, north of the land that was given to Benjamin, kind of in that central area. It seems to be, you notice there seems to be a theme. That's a lot of that seems to take place right there in Ephraim. Seems like Ephraim, it seems to be the center of a lot of things. So not just Ephraim, but we see a lot takes place in Ephraim, and that's not necessarily the tribe of Ephraim. Oftentimes, the northern part of Israel is referred to as Ephraim, it being the largest of the tribes in that area. So, just like later in the divided kingdom period, you've got Judah and Benjamin, but also you've got Simeon. Simeon's never mentioned. Benjamin's really not mentioned, but yet all of that's part of the nation of Judah. And so, Simeon, their land was completely encircled by Judah, and eventually they were just absorbed into Judah. But, so I don't really read much about them. But here in chapter 17, verse 1, again, this man by the name of Micah, he said to his mother, the 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears, here is the silver with me, I took it. And so here his mother, she had 1,100 shekels of silver, and they disappeared. And she said, I'll put a curse on whoever stole them. And Micah said, that was me, Mom. I did it. There's your money back. He didn't want to fall under the curse. And so right there, I'll tell you a little bit about the spiritual state of this man. And so his mother said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my son. Now, if I'd ever stole $1,100 from my mom, I don't know if she'd be quite this gracious. But anyway, she's, may the Lord be blessed to you. Now, she's got a wrong idea of what it means to be blessed by the Lord. as we see in verse 3. So when he had taken the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord. Now you see that all caps Lord, that is talking about the God of Israel. That is, his name is Jehovah or Yahweh. It depends on how it's pronounced, but notice who she specifies her God is that she wants to serve. So she says, I wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son to make a carved image and a molded image. Now therefore I will return it to you. So she had been saving the silver to make an idol for God, for Jehovah. And so again, against the second commandment, have no graven images. Or to make no graven images, not of a fake God and not of a real God, not of the real God. Or to have no graven images. So she wants to make a graven image, a carved image, and it's in a molded image. Really, those two words describe the idol and the thing the idol sits on. And so it's the base and the idol itself.
Okay.
And so it's.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry.
What about the cross?
About a cross.
What about the cross? It represents what? God?
It represents the crucifixion of Christ. I don't know that it is just the empty cross. I don't know for sure. I wouldn't know, personally wouldn't say that's idolatry. Now, if you bow down and start worshiping that thing, that makes it an idol. You go back to, in the book of Numbers, chapter 20, the Israelites are complaining about the difficult way they're going, and God said, I've had enough of this. He sent those burning fiery serpents to bite them. And so 26,000 people are bitten and die from this snake bite. And to end the curse, God told Moses to make a graven image of a serpent and to put it up on a pole. And whoever looked on the pole would then be healed. That was the appropriate use of that thing. God even commanded, make it and go look at it. He didn't say bow down and worship it. He said go look at it. And then we come forward in time to the time of Hezekiah, 1,000 years later, over 1,000 years later, and they're using it as an idol. They're worshiping it. And so that's where, he famously destroys it and calls it Nehushtan, a piece of brass. So if it is a symbol to remember Christ on the cross, I don't necessarily think that's wrong to have one. Personally, I don't choose to display it, but I don't feel a need to, but I don't feel a need for that reminder all the time. Some physical object that I've got. And sometimes I think people wear it as I don't know, here, look at me, I'm something.
I'm a Christian,
Yeah. And so, if you have to have a cross around your neck to be known, to be seen as a Christian, you got problems. You're not living right, so. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's an idol. It can become one, but I don't know that it is. And then when you see the crucifix with Christ on it, then it starts getting some of the things we see in the Catholic Church, their iconography, where they worship these icons that represent the various saints. That's certainly idolatry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but isn't it more, to me, wearing a cross, and you have one, is identifying yourself as a Christian, like they used to do, making the fish sign,
Yeah.
so that they knew that they were safe talking to another Christian.
Yeah.
I think that's more of what it really represents. Is you're kind of letting somebody know there was somebody familiar that knows the Christian.
Okay. Yeah.
God and that. And it's not that they're trying to show off or anything or using it as an idol. I think it's just representing that you're who you are and you're proud of it. And You want somebody to know that they're safe around you if they're another Christian.
Right. So, I don't have an issue with that at all, so, yeah. So it's just, it's kind of a judgment call on us and how we're gonna use it. But, I was just reminded of a funny story driving around through India with, my translator sitting next to me, and we're just driving through, and, you know, there's a lot of traffic, and we're going through this little town, a little city. The little city over there's got 1 million or less. That's a little city, but, we're driving this little city, and there's all these different shrines and idols everywhere. And I asked, you know, what's that one there? Big statue of a monkey. And they said, well, that's, you know, this certain god here, and well, that's a shrine to something else. And then we drove by one, and I was like, well, it looked just like a Hindu shrine, but it had a Jesus figure out in front of it. And I said, is that a Hindu shrine, or is that a church? He said, oh, that's a Hindu shrine, because the Hindus worship Jesus just like he's one of the other 5 million gods they have. And then a little while further, we drove by, there was another one that had Jesus out in front of it. And I said, well, what about that? So that's a Catholic church. And I was like, he said, in India, the only way to tell the difference between the Catholic church and the Hindu places is the idols they have outside.
You know, when we were in Rome 4 years ago, went to the Vatican, the statues and idols were by 100. And a lot of people would stop and get the cross sign and kneel and,
Yeah. That's idolatry.
that made me pretty nervous.
That's idolatry. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. All right, so here's this shrine he's going to make. And so she makes the idols, and the man Micah had a shrine and made an ephod and household idols and consecrated one of his sons who became his priest. And so the ephod would be that priestly garment that would be worn, and the household idols. These are, the word there is teraphim, and the teraphim, they weren't necessarily idols to gods, but they were little statues that represented, well, like when, if you'll remember when Jacob left his father-in-law Laban's house. They took with them the household gods, and he pursued them to get the household gods back. And what those really were represented, it was be like a bill or a deed of ownership. And so anyway, I don't know if that's, but they would represent, you know, that he owned this piece of property, and so there was this teraphim that went with that, this little visible, physical representation. And so that's the word they use, but here it's like he's got here an idol to God, Jehovah, and then whatever lesser gods that he invents for himself. And so, and then he makes his own son a priest. And so verse 6 gives explanation again. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. And so we go on to verse 7, continuing with the story of Micah. It says, now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah. He was a Levite and was staying there. And so he's from the tribe, so he's of the family of Judah. He's not of the family of Judah if he's a Levite, but he is in the area or the land, the tribal allotment of Judah. Remember, the Levites, they're spread out all over. And so this was a man who lived there near Jerusalem, or in Jerusalem, in the land pertaining to Judah. He was a Levite, and he was staying there. Then the man departed from Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. There's a question, why is this Levite walking around trying to find work? They were supposed to be supported by the offerings of the people. But what happens when the people stop making offerings?
Stop.
They have
So-
no ownership, so they won't.
That's right. And so that seems to be the case here. The worship of God has gotten to the point where the Levites aren't even getting fed. And so he's kind of like, I got to find something to do. And so trying to find wherever he could find a place. So he comes over to the mountains of Ephraim to the house of Micah as he journeyed. And Micah said to him, where do you come from? And he said to him, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah. And I'm on my way to find a place to stay. He's just kind of trying to make a living. Got to live somehow. Micah said to him, dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me. And I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year and a suit of clothes and your sustenance. So the Levite went in. And so he's made his own gods and his own shrine. And now he tried to make his son a priest, but he's found something better now. Oh, this is an actual someone from the Levitical family. And so he makes him his priest. And you're going to pay him to be his priest. And live with him. Then the Levite was content to dwell with a man, and the young man became one of his sons to him. So he became like a father to Micah. And so this Levite has gone way off the rails, hasn't he? Micah's already off the rails, and this Levite has gone off the rails to join him. Yes, ma'am.
Is it unusual for someone like Micah? Okay, let's start with his mom. Is it unusual for them to have that? To me, is that a lot of money? 11 shekels.
That's been quite a bit of money, yeah.
So were they a wealthy family, sir?
I'm sorry?
Were they a wealthy family?
Yeah, I would say they were wealthy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with 1,100 shekels of money laying around, that was money that had been set aside. I'd say they're probably pretty well off. Now they're able to support Micah, and they're able to support this Levites.
Now that's what got me. I mean, man, you already stole that much from your mom, and now you're even spending more money for this Levite.
Yeah. So, they're offering him 120 shekels a year, which, that's a decent wage for a year, and she had 1,100 of them. So she had a lot of money. And so Micah consecrated the Levites, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will be good to me since I have a Levite as a priest. And so he thinks that having someone from the priestly family in his house is like a talisman that's just going to make everything go well for him. Yes,
I
sir.
got one more question, just
Okay.
one. Are all Levites priests?
No.
So this guy may not even fit a priest.
Probably not. Yeah, only just of the sons of Kohath, and only of the sons of Kohath, the ones that descend through Aaron. Yeah. And so those are the only ones who were priests. The rest of the Levites, they served the priesthood. They served in various ways, but they were not priests, not eligible to be priests. And so here is this man that should have known better as a Levite. He should have known better, but he gets this opportunity to go and be a priest and make lots of money and have some place to live. Again, he's facing starvation.
He walked into a good deal.
He walked into a good deal, but there's nothing that says a Levite couldn't take a job as a laborer in the field. So he takes a job as a priest. And so he's in a desperate situation. And now he's got a living. He's made some money, and he's not going to starve to death. But do the ends justify the means?
No.
So he's gone wrong. But a lot of people, they throw away their religion for money, and it happens to Christians. They walk away because, I can make more money if I stop doing this or start doing this. And so I know some members of the church that opened a winery. They're making lots of money with a winery. They had good land, and it was said to be a really good place to grow grapes. And so they started growing grapes and making wine and selling wine, and now they're very wealthy. and, physically. All right, chapter 18 then. Again, it begins with, this is another episode, but it's going to involve Micah. So this is kind of the introduction to what's going to take place here. In those days, there was no king in Israel. And in those days, the tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for itself to dwell in. For until that day, their inheritance among the tribes of Israel had not fallen to them. And so they, remember, God gave the land to Israel. They had to go and take it. Each tribe got their allotment of land. They had to go and capture their allotment, take it from the Canaanites. Well, the land that Dan was given butts right up to the Philistines. And in fact, the land that is owned by the Philistines was actually given to Dan, but Dan did not overcome the Philistines. And so they were just kind of cramped in a small area, and they were running out of room because they couldn't conquer the Philistines. They had put their trust in God to do it. And so they are going to go find a new place to live. So the children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from the territory, men of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. They said to them, go search the land. So they went to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. So 5 spies are sent out to go and find, basically said, go find some place easy to conquer, so we can take over their land and live there. And so they begin their journey, and on the way they stop at the house of Micah. And while they were at the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite, and turned and said to him, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What do you have here? Now they recognized his voice. It's not, I don't think it means that they recognized him as a person, but maybe they recognized his accent. You know, you ever talk to your neighbor and go, you're not from around here. Somebody with that New York accent. I remember we moved into a place in Kyle, Texas, and my neighbor right behind me, I got to know him a little bit, talking to him, and he was an older man. And he sounded just like one of those guys from the gangster movies from New York. He had that accent, that New Jersey, New York, Italian mafia accent. And
Maybe it was.
yeah, you tell he wasn't from Texas. So whatever he wasn't from around here.
You trying to make you a deal you couldn't refuse.
No. But it's pretty nice old feller. But anyway, you can tell by his accent he wasn't from Texas. So I think that's kind of what this is. But, you know, different regions of Israel would have different accents. Especially they didn't get around like we do today. You know, I saw something today where America's losing its accents because people are migrating all over the place, and you know, people from New York live in Florida and whatever. You know, as people move around, those accents are starting to kind of just go away. But here, there's still a definite accent difference between one tribe and another, because they don't migrate that much. They kind of stick around close to home, and so anyway, they recognize you're not from around here. Where'd you come from? What are you doing here? And so, what do you have here? He said to them thus, and so Micah did for me. He has hired me, and I became his priest. And so he admits, I'm just a hireling here. He hired me. So they said to him, please inquire of God that we may know whether this journey on which we will go will be prosperous. And the priest said to them, go in peace, the presence of the Lord be with you on your way. And so he's like, oh yeah. I think he sees an opportunity. Wait a minute, these people, they're richer than Micah. This is a whole country of people, not just some guy. And so he says, yeah, God says go ahead and do it. And God will be with you on your way. So the 5 men departed and went to Laish. They saw the people who were there, how they dwelt safely in the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. There were no rulers in the land who might put them to shame for anything. They were far from the Sidonians, and they had no ties with anyone. And so Sidon is a city up in the north on the coast there of the Mediterranean. It's outside of the area that was allotted to Israel. So it's not part of Canaan. Well, apparently some people from Sidonia, from Sidon, have come to this region in the north part of Ephraim, and they've kind of built a city there, but they're just kind of on their own. There's no ruler, there's no army, no standing army. And so they see this and they think, well, this will be easy pickings. And so they come to Laish, they see. Then the spies came back to their brethren at Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brethren said to them, what is your report? And they said, arise, let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Would you do nothing? Do not hesitate to go and enter to possess the land. They said, these people up here, we can go conquer them, there'll be easy picking, so let's go do it. And so they say, verse 10, when you go, you will come to a secure people and a large land, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is on earth. Remember, they say God's given to you because the Levite in Micah's house said that God had done it. He's obviously telling them what they want to hear. So with 600 men of the family of the Danites went from there, Zorah and Eshtaol, armed with weapons of war. They sent 600 men. I think this is really going to be easy pickings, because at one point in the book of Judges, there were 64,000 men of Dan of, military age. And so here they only send 600. They could have sent a lot more apparently, but they think we'll just send 600. And so verse 12, and they went up and encamped in Kirjath Jearim in Judah. Therefore they call that place Mahana Dan to this day. There is west of Kirjath Jearim, and they passed from there to the mountains of Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. So now these 600 men, this army has come up here, and they've come to Micah's house. Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brethren, do you know that there are in these houses an ephod, household idols, a carved image, and a molded image? Now therefore consider what you should do. They said they got all this whole worship set up, this whole, idolatry set up here. So what should we do? And the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong, I jumped the whole page, didn't I? Verse 15. So when they turned aside, there came the house of the young Levite man to the house of Micah and greeted him. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. So here, his little house compound, maybe the house where the priest lives, the house where they worship, the house they live in. There's a little compound, like a wall or gate around it. And so the 600 men, they come over there, they stand by the gates. Then the 5 men who had gone out to spy the land went up, entering there. They took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the molded image. The priest stood at the entrance of the gate with 600 men who were armed with weapons of war. So they come up there. They say, we're just going to take all this stuff. And so they grab it all, and they're just going to take it. When these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and molded image, the priest said to them, what are you doing? And they said to him, be quiet. Put your hand over your mouth and come with us to be a father and a priest to us. Is it better for you to be a priest to the household of one man, or that you be a priest to a tribe and a family in Israel? And so he said, which is better? What's a better opportunity? You just hear this one puny little family, you can be the head priest of a whole country or a whole tribe. So that's a promotion, certainly in worldly standpoint. I know preachers are always looking for the next big thing. They get into a congregation, it's like they judge their work by how many people are there when they preach. And they're always looking for a better opportunity. Might go to this other congregation that has 80 people, that's a better opportunity in a couple of years. Well, what about this one that's got 300 people? Even better opportunity. Well, it may be, it may not be, but if that is the only thing you're judging on, well, that's a problem. So, anyway, he sees an opportunity for advancement. And so it says, so the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the household idols and carved image and took his place among the people. When they turned and departed and put the little ones, the livestock and the goods in front of them, and when they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. And they called out to the children of Dan. They turned around and said to Micah, "What ails you that you have gathered such a company?" So he said, "You have taken away my gods which I had made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now what more do I have? How can you say to me, what ails you?" And so there's a telling phrase right there. You've taken the gods that I have made. That is certainly indicative of all the man-made gods that we have that can just be taken away. I saw an article, it was kind of humorous. How big is your God? And if you carry your God away, well, maybe it's not a God at all. They talk about, mostly about be careful not to misuse your cell phone. But, so how big is your God? Your God can be taken away, you know, God at all. So he made these gods, and now somebody else is going to take them away. The children of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you, and you lose your life and the lives of your household." You better hush up about it, or we're going to kill you. Then the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. So they took the things that Micah had made, and the priest who had belonged to him, and went to Laish to a people quiet and secure, and they struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer because it was far from Sidon, and they had no ties with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob, so they rebuilt the city and dwelt there, and they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city formerly was Laish. And so Dan, then the city of Dan and the region around it becomes the main area of the tribe of Dan. And so they could not overcome the Philistines, so they go find somebody a lot easier to conquer, and so they conquer them, and they dwell there, and they rename that city Dan. So, you know, in the New Testament, Dan is mentioned, you know, from Dan to Beersheba. Is kind of the region in general terms of Israel from north to south, from Dan to Beersheba. And so that's just, that's the northernmost area of Israel, the land that belonged, that was actually given to Dan. You know, the Philistines dwell there all the way through the time of David. And so we just see, what you see here is just a picture of the general state of things in Israel at this time. You know, how much has gone wrong at this point? You know, how far away has, you know, Micah and the Ephraimites and Dan, the Danites, how far have they gone from where they should be? You know, God is their king. That was how God set it up, the priest who spoke to them through the high priest. And so when they, you know, the priests, they're the ones who made the offerings. The Levites served the priests served God. And that was the way God intended for the system to work. You know, the Levites were spread out because they're to be educated of God, and they're to be the teachers. They're to teach the other tribes how to follow God. And so here, everything is just completely off. Yes, ma'am.
Verse are you on? I'm lost.
Oh, we just finished verse 26. So, it's just things are completely off kilt now. They're no longer serving God. They're no longer worshiping properly. The Levites are no longer being provided for by the offerings given to God. And so they're off on their own, doing their own thing, trying to find a way to make a living any way they can. And it's a mess. Verse 27 goes on, it says, they took the things Micah had made, and the priest who had belonged to him, and went to Laish, to the people quite secure. Wait. Oh, we did read that. They called the name of the city Dan. Verse 30, the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests of the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's carved image, which he had made at that time, or all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. And so remember, Shiloh is where the tabernacle has been set up. That's where they go to worship. But here people have said, well, I won't go all the way down there, I'll just make my own place to worship. And I think they're really thinking they're serving God. The God of the Bible is who they're attempting to worship. And so, if you remember, back, when Moses was on the mountain and the people hadn't seen him in 40 days, where's he gone? What's happened? And, Aaron made them an idol. Made that golden calf, said, this is the God that led you out of Egypt. It was a representation of God. To them, Moses was who they looked to for an answer to God, from God. Well, Moses is gone now, so we need something else. So they made this idol, this golden calf. And bowed down to worship Jehovah. But it was a graven image. And I think it's the same thing that Micah has done. And then later, you'll see Jeroboam there when the kingdom split, divided. He didn't want people from the northern kingdoms going down into Judah to worship. And so he set up idols at Dan and at somewhere else. Yes, ma'am.
Just in those 2 chapters that you read, no one inquired of God.
No.
Not one of them.
Other than those men say, well, hey, ask the false priest. But, again, that false priest doesn't ask God.
Exactly.
He just says, God been with you. Okay, good enough for us. And so, you got some. So it just kind of shows us the depravity, the moral decline of the nation. And we come to chapter 19, it's one of the more despicable things you read about in the scriptures. And there's a Levite, again, it's about the Levites. And so here, these are supposed to be the godly people who are teachers of Israel, the ones that are dedicated to God. The tribe that belongs to God. And so verse 19, it came to pass in those days, or chapter 19, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. And so here, this Levite, he's here. He takes a concubine, second wife, basically. But his concubine, it says in verse 2, played the harlot against him and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah and was there 4 whole months. So she basically runs away from it. And she goes back home to live with her parents. And so she's there for 4 months, so it says, and her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and to bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate, drank, and lodged together. So they come to visit, trying to sweet talk his wife into coming home, and stays with his father-in-law, and he eats with them and drinks with them for 3 days. It came to pass on the 4th day that they arose early in the morning, and he stood to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. And don't just leave yet. Let's eat first, and then you can leave. So they sat down, and the 2 of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, please be content to stay all night, and let your heart be merry. So the meal took longer. It's getting late in the afternoon, so just go ahead and stay the night. When the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him, so he lodged there again. Then he rose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart, but the young woman's father said, please refresh your heart. So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. Excuse me. When the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servants, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go your way early so that you may get home. So again, he encourages him to delay. Maybe he just doesn't want his daughter to leave. But whatever his motivation, he just keeps, oh, stay a little longer, stay a little longer. So here on the 5th day, they're going to leave in the morning. They'll stay till after lunch. It's after lunch. Well, it's almost dark. You might as well stay another day. But this time he says, no, we're going to go. And so verse 10, however, the man was not willing to spend the night. So he arose and departed and came opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddle donkeys. His concubine was also with him. So as they're making their way back, they're close by Jebus, which becomes Jerusalem later. One of the last cities to be conquered of the Canaanite cities. And they come there, they're close by, and they were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, come, please, let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. And so let's go into the Jebusite city and stay there. We'll be safe. Not safe to be out overnight. That's why the cities had walls, why they had gates, because it's not safe to be out after dark, outside of the city. And so he refuses to go into where the Jebusites are. The master said to him, we will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeon. No, let's not go into this pagan city of foreigners. We won't be safe there. Let's go to this city of our brethren. We'll be safer there. But remember, the key, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did which was right in his own sight. So going to Gibeah is not going to be a good idea. And we're going to stop right there. Sorry?
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, the cliffhanger. Yeah.